The January 25th meeting of the Caroline County Board of Supervisors present. Let the record show that we have present Mr. Bobby Popowitz representing Port Royal District, Mr. Jeff Seeley representing the Bowling Green District, Mr. Wayne Akers representing the Madison District, and I'm Floyd Thomas representing the Mattapanai District. Our work session ran a little bit longer, so we're getting a slightly late start, but here we are. I'm going to ask Mr. Popowitz if he would deliver us the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Popowitz.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, thank you for your guidance and your help. Give us the strength that we need to make the right decisions for this county and the good citizens hereof, and also be with those who defend our freedoms every day across the seas and at home. For all these things we pray. Amen.
Amen. American flag is always supposed to be in the middle.
No. No, when they're the same size.
Oh, well, yeah. Well,
If it was higher, it would be.
it's supposed to be higher. All right.
Yeah. Or get a bigger one.
All right. I think that's one of the many important things we need to discuss today, but we will discuss that one a little bit later. Amendments to the agenda, Mr. Ashcraft, you have...
Mr. Chairman, you have or the members of the board, you have the sheet that was sent out to you. I do need to add consent agenda the warrants. I need to have those removed.
Removing warrants from the...
We approved a series of warrants last week.
Okay.
Hey, Will, can I ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Akers.
Did we ever check into as far as payment to the Equalization Board? I asked you about it.
We checked. I did. I'll let you know.
Okay, so we're removing warrants from the consent agenda, and board members have additional information, and we do have an appointment modification for the redistricting committee, which is already on the agenda. And board members, I am going to add just purely again as informational agenda item, what I called it 5A, which is the Reedy Church letters of interest and timetable for appointment. And I think board members have in their packets a list of all of those who have expressed interest to this date for the Reedy Church supervisor position. So if we have the others were on there, so if we could have a motion to amend the agenda to include item 5A, discussion of Reedy Church letters of interest.
You're not doing consent agenda, correct? We're just amending the agenda.
We're removing item 8 from the consent agenda, and we're adding 5A, which is the Reedy Church supervisor position.
Okay.
So that's the motion that we need, if you'd like to make it.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, sir. Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by
Mr. Chairman,
Mr.
you also need to remove item E from the consent agenda as well.
Well, that's already on.
That's
It's already
my
on.
concern. Are we to the consent agenda? Because there's a couple.
No, we're not at the consent agenda, we're just making amendments
Okay.
to the agenda.
I mean, it's already on there.
But you'll come back and,
That's why I didn't make note
right.
that item E was already being removed.
and we're all set, so. All right, we're adding 5A, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay, that motion carries unanimously. Opening board comments, Mr. Popowitz,
I have none, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Seeley,
None at this time, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Akers,
No, sir.
and I have none. We'll move right on to presentations. Mr. Parton, and I see you've done an excellent job since we met on Friday.
Even better, Mr. Chairman, yes.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, this time every year we need to consider our renewal for health and dental insurance. We need to select a plan and a carrier for the year that begins March 1st of this year and goes through February 29th of 2012. This year, we find ourselves in the rare position of the original proposal called for a very slight increase of 0.005%, which translates into about $786, I believe. Friday afternoon, we got word from our consultant that we've actually been able to do better than that by combining our dental insurance with our health insurance with Anthem. We can actually achieve a decrease of about $5,000, which is actually good because, in another way, because there's been some dissatisfaction expressed by employees with the Assurant dental coverage, which we went to last year. So we can replace that with Anthem Dental, which has a better network, and by combining the two, actually achieve a decrease of about $5,000 overall. So obviously, we would recommend that we select that option. We would ask if we could pass the $5,000 savings on to employees, and the county's funding would remain relatively flat, depending on the numbers. And that is our recommendation, Mr. Chairman. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Parton. How do you define passing on to the employees?
We would divide the savings basically along the lines that we have the contributions. We have two different plans now. We have an HMO and a PPO. We have 4 tiers in each of those plans, starting with employee only all the way to family. We would basically keep the same framework there and reduce each of those tiers and plans by the $5,000 and make it work out that way.
Okay, so net to the employees, it's quite a few employees. They may see a $200 or $300 decrease in their insurance premiums.
It would be a small decrease, but I think, Fran, help me out here. All of them would see a slight decrease, I believe.
It works out to be about a 3% decrease in their premium each month.
3% each month. So that adds up to $5,000 for everybody?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Okay, just wanted to make sure we understood what passing it along to the employees meant. Any questions for Mr. Parton at this time?
I guess my only question is the dental insurance then actually improves with combining it?
The rate does.
The network improves a little bit, yes. One of the complaints about the Assurant coverage is that the network is not very big. Anthem's network, it's not significantly bigger, but it is a little better than the Assurant network.
Okay.
Ms. Akers, you have any questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Mr.
I'll make a motion.
Well, give me 1 second. Mr. Parton and I met on Friday, and when we met on Friday, the cost was going to be $10,000 more to the county. So whatever Mr. Parton did between Friday and today, I need you to do that at every department we have and for everything. So I just want to say you did a great job in getting the cost reduced. So
As much as I'd like to take credit for that, I have to credit our consultant. They negotiated with Anthem, and by combining those two, they were able to reduce the cost.
okay, well, let's get the consultant involved in a lot of things, from school board work to public safety work to everything. Mr. Akers, your motion's in order now.
Make a motion that we accept the recommendation of county staff as to combining the medical and dental insurance coverage with Anthem, as well as passing the savings on to county employees.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Popowitz to approve the recommendation for medical and dental insurance coverage renewal. All those, discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you again, Mr. Parton.
Thank you very much.
Special thanks to the consultant that worked on us. Agenda item number 2 is appointments, and in this case, it's the redistricting committee. One of the Reedy Church District appointees for the redistricting committee is scheduled for surgery and will not be able to participate in the committee until April. Mr. Roselle has indicated that Joseph James was the next person on the list that expressed an interest in serving. If that is the desire of the board, and as we all know, Mr. Roselle is no longer with us, but how would the board like to proceed? We can take that appointment and move on quickly if we'd like. Motion to that effect in order? Or questions or discussion?
I have no discussion. I didn't realize, to be honest with you, that we were appointing the committee members based on political affiliation, to be quite honest.
I didn't either.
I did not look at that when I made my appointments as to whether they were Republicans or Democrats. It was just the fact that I felt that they were the best people for the job in my district. So, that's the position I took when I made my appointments.
Well, it does say Mr. Rozelle indicated that he was the next Democrat on the list. I don't know whether that was the next Democrat he was going to appoint or whatever. If there's a problem with that, we can leave that position open and move on with the redistricting committee as is. And when we do get a new Reedy Church supervisor, we'll allow that person to make the appointment. Either way, however the board desires. How do we desire?
That may be the best, is to let the new board member make the appointment
Okay.
as to who, that's my position.
And I think there's time, because we still, as we've all been told, it's going to be at least the middle of February before we get any sort of numbers.
That's true, and Mr. Fincham has also asked us if we would appoint some other members of the community too, maybe from some other nonprofit groups or things of that nature. So that's fine. If the board wishes to have this appointment placed on the agenda after the selection or appointment of a new Reedy Church supervisor, that's fine. We can do that. All right, we'll.
That's what I would do.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, if I just might add, I've asked Mr. Fincham to look into an organizational meeting, even if the numbers aren't back, just to make sure that the committee can be thinking about, because their work is going to be in earnest once all that information comes forward. So I believe February the 8th is the date that he was looking at.
Okay.
So just to let the board know that if there are any other appointments or any other people that you want to have on that committee, we may want to be getting that together.
Mr. Chairman, I know that we have talked about having some other individuals from other community organizations appointed. Do we have any idea how many? And from each one of us, I mean, do we want to turn in some additional names? I don't know how to proceed with that.
I think what we need to do, and of course, the whole redistricting process has to go past or through the Department of Justice once we get it done. And one of the things the Department of Justice is going to look at in particular, and I just know this from experience, is they would look at minority representation, make sure that the committee is fairly balanced, those type of things. So that's, I guess, what you need to look at if you make another appointment. I haven't looked at what the makeup of the committee is. I appointed the two people that responded to me, and that's all I did. So there may be some things we'll have to make up. Ms. Fincham, anything you wanted to add to that?
Some of the guidance that we've received is that obviously you should have a representative of the school system, either as staff or as a committee member. Any affected special interest groups or protected interest. 2 cycles ago, if you remember, and I discussed it in the memo, when we created the 5th district, we agreed one of the primary purposes of that was to create a second minority-majority district based upon the population percentages in the county. You may want to have a representative actually of the NAACP as a member of this committee. That's some suggested guidance from the state as well as the federal government. A representative from the electoral board. I think one of the other things that we briefly mentioned is if you're creating additional districts, do you want to have a couple of at-large representatives, not representing any one of the existing 5 districts, but somebody at large to represent the interest of the public as a whole in terms of creating the other districts. Those were just some options that were discussed in my memo to the board from a couple of meetings ago. I think we can go ahead and start the process February 8th and have the first organizational meeting and at least get the process started, knowing that we will receive those numbers the end of that week.
Mr. Akers?
I have no problem in appointing or some of these groups serving on the redistricting committee. I just think we need to be careful not to overpopulate the committee, because if you have a tremendously large committee, I'm not sure we're going to be able to get the work done in the length of time that we have to do the work, and that concerns me
Right.
A great deal. The
Yes,
second
sir.
point is, I know we talked last week about the direction that maybe the board should lend to the committee. And I personally think that if this board is looking seriously at going to 7 districts or whatever it is that we are going to go to, we should send that message to the committee to let them know that that's what we're looking at doing, so that they can start that process from the very beginning rather than having to change it in midstream. And the second, if we are seriously looking at going with a staggered term process, I think we need to let the electoral board know that up front, so they can start that process as well, and also the committee can have that information as they work through this process. You know, I just recently read something, I think that was an email, we probably all received the email, about the at-large board member. That may be a tough time getting it through the Justice Department. It appears that the Justice Department does not look too favorably on at-large seats. And if that's the case, we need to decide whether we want to go to 7 districts. I would not like to see us go to 6 districts, because I served on a board that had 4 members, and again, we were friends and we got along well, but there were some votes that were tie votes where issues of importance were killed, were dead, because we could not get the majority vote. And so I think that it's important that you have an uneven number so that you do not run the risk of these tie votes as often as you want.
You mean like now?
Like right now, that's exactly right, yeah.
Okay. I think that's it, Mr. Fincham. And again, you know, kind of what I said to the sheriff and the other folks, we have to kind of prove what we're doing all the time. So traditionally, the redistricting committee comes up with several plans. You know, maybe you could give them one plan to start with to show what 5 districts would look like evenly balanced or close to it. And we already know what the problems are, but that would prove why we should go to another district. It's a little-known fact that my voting precinct is not even in my district, which is kind of odd, but it is
Although
the
legally
truth.
permissible.
Excuse me?
Although legally permissible.
Although legally permissible, it's extremely odd that your voting district is not even in or your voting place is not even in your district, and that's, you know, not really a big issue, but it is just a point that's out there. And Mr. Popowitz has like a 40-mile drive from one end of his district to the other, so those are all things we had to do last time to balance out 5. And I'm sure if we tried to do 5 again, the Madison district would be extremely small, and I'm not sure how you'd make Mattapanai stretch out to Carmel Church, but it could. So maybe we look at 5, we look at 7s, look at 7s a whole bunch of different ways, but we'll need some options, and that's my only point. Okay?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, sir. We're going to move to the consent agenda, which is, I'll ask Mr. Ashcraft to do it again. I like that process.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, the consent agenda as amended. Item B, approval of planning commission actions. C, approval of livestock damages claim. D, amendment of FY 2011 school budget for project graduation funds. Item F, authorization to apply for FY 2011 Virginia Office of Medical Services Rescue Squad Assistance Grant. Item G, authorization to apply for the Rappahannock Electric Cooperative 2011 Learn Grant. Item H, a request for deferral of a rezoning request RZ-04-2 2009 by 1D Young. And then, Mr. Chairman, you added the ones, didn't you add something on the consent agenda?
Oh, 5A. I'm going to do this separately.
Okay, I'm sorry. So that would complete the
So that's it.
consent agenda.
Question on the consent agenda, items to be removed?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
items B and C for additional discussion.
B and C for additional discussion. Motion to approve.
As well as H.
As well as H. Motion to approve D, F, and G would be in order.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Seeley, seconded by Mr. Popowitz. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. That motion carries unanimously. Item B, Mr. Seeley.
And I guess my question is that the only action that we have was deferred by the Planning Commission, so I'm wondering why it's on the agenda.
We just provide a running summary of planning commission actions to the board. It's not coming to you with a recommendation to advertise for a public hearing, so,
I guess I was confused because it's marked for action.
yeah, we could have just pulled that and not even sent that to you and just put it in for informational purposes. But there's no public hearing, there's no action from the planning commission coming forward. That will not happen until February. So you're looking at a March or April public hearing.
Yeah, and really, Mr. Seeley, and I believe, not speaking for you, Mr. Fincham, but it's the intention to have the Planning Commission action on the consent agenda as purely an informational item.
And I would agree, I guess what I was looking at was the action box checked. And I wasn't sure what the action was going to be.
There's no action to take at this point in time, Ms. Seeley.
Okay.
No action, so we'll vote on B in a second. C apparently, well, C is the livestock claim.
Livestock claim. Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I saw that we had a max amount of $400. And I'm just, I guess if somebody can do the math for me on how we get to 513 when the max is 400. And the chickens were supposed to be maxed at $10 a piece. I'm just trying to, I guess some of these, there's 2 of each of these.
That's correct. There's an itemized list, believe it or not, in the,
I saw the list and I couldn't decide what we were doing, but the whole thing came to $513. And then it says not to exceed the amount of $400. Is that, so that's just per animal?
the 400 is on the alpaca.
Right.
The $400 limit is on an animal. There's a $10 limit on fowl, I believe they characterize it as.
That's what it says. Okay, I was just trying to figure out the max and then 513. And we've not found whether it was, I mean, this is I gotta tell you, I've had livestock. This is a lot for one animal to kill.
Alpaca are fairly expensive, though.
No, I'm talking about the number of chickens killed. I mean, that's a lot of chickens killed by one animal.
Oh.
I mean, I've had dogs go through chickens 2, 3 in one clip, but never that many. So if this was one time, I guess, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
The lady that reported the incident indicated that she had saw 2 dogs in her field and did not see them when she left and let her livestock out. The alpaca and the chickens were out there, and then when she came back, she found the alpaca had been killed as well as the chickens, and the animal control went out to the scene and they saw the dog, I guess, paw impressions everywhere.
Okay.
So it was a dog's, more than one dog that had committed this offense. So, and she does not even own a dog. She just,
Okay.
so that's the details of the event.
And this is a county ordinance still that we're following the state ordinance, and traditionally
Yeah,
the
it's on-
Commonwealth has had reimbursement for livestock claims, so.
Yes, sir.
We're basically caught in
The
that.
maximum is $400 for the alpaca and $10 per chicken.
And that's one of my questions, is the fact that, you know, this alpaca was 2 months old, weighed 20 pounds. And you're saying the value is $400.
The
Did
home-
we,
That value, my understanding is that value came from the extension office, actually in Spotsylvania now, because we don't have anyone in Caroline that can do that. But that's the fair market value that Julie Heffler was given from the Spotsylvania extension office.
Okay.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Small item, but I also just want to make sure that we've got our numbers right. Who wrote up the sheet that's written? Who wrote that up?
I did.
You've got 10 hens
Well-
and 1 rooster. The type one, I suppose you did.
Yes, if you count, there's an incorrect number in the handwritten. If you go through and count them, it's actually 11 and 1.
12 total?
But who sent this in? Did the deputy write it up, or did the,
The second page and the third page were provided by the sheriff's office.
this right here?
The handwritten page?
Yes,
Sheriff's
the
office.
handwritten, correct. It says 10 hens and 1 rooster, but if you go and count the actual itemized list, it's really 11 hens and 1 rooster.
But I mean, the
Yeah.
owner signed it saying that it was 11 chickens total. And the reason I bring it up is the fact that we just need to make sure that. we
I'll
go to-
verify those
like,
numbers. I'll verify
It's
them.
not a lot of money, and I understand that
Yes,
I'm not
sir.
quibbling over the money, but the accuracy, I think we need to be careful
It
with.
needs to be correct, yes, sir. I'll get that exact number very shortly.
So let's pull that, and we, till he gets the accurate number.
Okay, we're gonna move forward on that one, but when you get us the accurate number, we'll make sure. So it's, and I see the 2 different numbers. I got 212 one place and 213 another place, and trust me, my time is worth more than $1. I'll be happy to give you $1 to move on, but we'll take care of that next meeting. Mr. Seeley, you had, or Mr. Akers, you had H?
I did. I guess my question is, I see that property up for sale now. So I don't know that we need to continue this rezoning request any longer. I'm not sure that it's not time to say this rezoning request is to be denied, and I think that that may be best for the county as well as everybody concerned.
Yes, sir. Anticipating that you might want to actually discuss this and bring the agenda item back, we brought it forward one meeting earlier than was actually approved by the board. If you want to take action, you would need to do so by your February 10th meeting. It was deferred to February. So if you would like to actually make this an agenda item for that meeting,
I
we could
would.
take care of that.
It's in my district, or in the Madison district. I just think we've been carrying this now for over a year. It was probably last September, October that he came forward with a request, did not have a business plan, had no funding for the project. And again, he has the property up for sale at this point, and I'm not sure that he plans to move forward even with this particular proposal.
Yes, sir. We'll put this as a agenda item, unfinished business for your next meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Because we did, Mr. Fincham, before you leave, we did hold a public hearing for this particular.
Yes, sir. Public hearing was held. It was closed, and
And we deferred action at that.
you deferred action. Mr. Young has previously submitted a request for a 6-month deferral.
Right.
This would be the second request.
And traditionally, we only allow 1 6-month deferral under normal circumstances, for the most part.
For the most part, yes, sir.
But he was supposed to have brought information back indicating that he, even at the next meeting, after we had the public hearing, that he had the funding for his project.
Yes, sir.
And that's when he asked for it to be.
And with the economy the way it is, yes, sir.
No, we're gonna bring C and H back to the agenda at our next board meeting, based on having the right numbers, and then we're gonna schedule the action for the deferred rezoning request. The only thing we did approve, which was the approval of planning commission action, which was item B, which basically was no action.
Mr. Chairman, I did verify with Sergeant Heffler, and she said the total is 12.
Oh, you just verified the total
I
is 12?
called her out there.
Oh, you
Yes,
called her out there?
Yes, sir.
So is it $512 or $513?
513.
$513. You sure?
It's what,
Because you're wasting a lot of my time here.
I'm
for a
not
dollar.
trying to. I'm just trying to get the right number, and it was 12 chickens.
I'm just trying to
Yes,
enjoy
sir.
life, Mr.
I understand.
Mosher, so
That's
I hope
fine.
you don't mind.
I don't mind a bit.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we approve agenda item B and C.
And C. Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Akers, seconded by Mr. Popowitz, approving consent agenda items B and C after further discussion. Discussion on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion carries unanimously, so that would take care of the consent agenda. Mr. Fincham had asked me if he could do those two before. If the board doesn't mind, Mr. Spinner is here, and he had intended to speak at public comments but needed to leave early. I'm just going to give a quick overview. If I make a mistake, Mr. Spinner, feel free to correct me, because I'm kind of used to that. But and I don't have it on this one. In May of last year, Mr. Spinner was driving into the parking lot of the courthouse. Apparently, in the parking lot, there had been a traffic sign or some sort of sign removed, but not totally removed, so there was a spike in the road. Mr. Spinner's car ran over that spike, got caught on his bumper, and he incurred $400 and some worth of damage.
414.
Is it 412 or 413?
$414.
$414 worth of damage for his car. He filed a claim with the county's insurance, VACORP, and according to Mr. Spinner, the insurance company said the county was not negligent enough in that case to warrant the insurance company paying. So Mr. Spinner's from the Reedy Church District. He called me the other day and asked me if I would present it for the board in light of the situation we have there. So if there's anything, Mr. Spinner, if you'd like to come forward and briefly explain anything that I've missed.
Sure.
Because Mr. Ashcraft wanted to put it on the agenda, and we basically didn't have time to do it. So we're giving you the opportunity now.
Okay, well, actually what happened was I pulled into the parking space. The pipe was just past the curbing of the parking space, and without realizing it, my front bumper popped in, this piece of metal popped in underneath my front bumper. When I went to back out of the space after I was in the courthouse to testify for somebody else, it yanked my front bumper out. It ripped the bottom of it and pulled it out from the sides, and I didn't even realize it had happened. I got a sheriff's deputy report, and pictures have been taken. And like I said, I filed the complaint with the, or filed a claim with the insurance company. And like Mr. Thomas said, they sent me back a letter. And I also talked to a lady there. And the statement that really got me was when she said the county wasn't negligent enough. And that just really kind of took me aback a little bit. You know, my thing is that I'm not looking for much. I just like to have, you know, if somebody had damaged their property on my property, I mean, I'd be liable for that. And, you know, I just want, you know, what the cost was to me to have this repaired, that's all. And it was, somewhere, to round it off, $414.
Has anybody from staff talked to VACORP?
Mr. Parton was working on it for a while back. But you haven't talked to VACORP?
I talked to them briefly, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Akers, and I really don't, that's basically what he just said is what they said. It didn't meet the threshold of a claim that they would honor, and they denied it.
We probably need to talk to the executive director for VACORP, because VACORP is an arm of VACO.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is just a small amount claim. It's $414, and I think we need to talk to them a little bit more about, hey, you need to look at this claim again and look seriously at paying this claim. But I don't necessarily think you need to talk to one of the adjusters or
This is a claim specialist.
Chris
claim
Carey.
specialist. You probably need to talk to the manager or executive director of VACO and explain to him. It used to be Wayne Faddis. And
It's now Chris Carey, Mr. Akers.
I'm sorry?
Chris Carey is now.
Chris Carey, right.
Oh.
And you need to talk with him. Personally,
I'll talk with him tomorrow.
What,
yeah.
just out of curiosity, what are the circumstances as to why this piece of metal was in the,
I have no idea. Mr. Spinner just showed me a picture, and it looked like a stake that you would put a hollow sign post on top of, and apparently they'd removed the stake. Or is that, what's your understanding of why the stake was there?
Apparently, there had been some type of signpost there when the county administrator's office was over on that street, and when the new courthouse was built, they took the sign down, and they apparently cut the post off at a certain level, and it just wasn't, I mean, it was probably low enough for a lot of cars, but my car, I have a Ford Escape, and the bumper on that just sits a little bit lower than I guess an average bumper. I mean, I'm not even sure, but all I know is, this happened when I pulled into the parking lot. Oh, and it was removed within a week after this happened, so.
Don't know. Mr. Parton, we just got a really good question. Have we cut the stake down all the way, or is somebody else next?
It was removed within a week after
It was removed
this
in a week?
happened.
Okay. And Mr. Spinner, I shared my pain with you.
Okay,
I ran over a concrete bumper in the parking lot in Fredericksburg at the mall.
yeah,
$2,000 later, I got my car back. So
yeah,
I can understand, but nobody talked to me about it but my insurance agent. So
okay,
I think we need all of your documentation. If you can make copies,
sure.
you can give that to Mr. Parton.
Okay.
What we're going to do is we're going to try to, I think it's the will of the board, to try to talk to VACORP first
Okay,
to impress upon them the importance of paying this claim,
okay,
and we will, go from there. So I think that's where we want to do first.
all right.
And if they can pay the claim, then you're happy, and we'll work it out. If not, we'll have to look at some other alternatives.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I appreciate
Okay.
you. I didn't expect you to bring this up tonight, but I appreciate you doing it.
Well, it's our pleasure.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, sir. Make sure you get those to Mr. Parton, and I will give Mr. Parton this other one. Mr. Fincham, you want to do item number 5? Excuse me?
I'll be here for the second part of the meeting, but I'll go ahead and do it if you want to.
Well, I hadn't planned to be here, so if you don't Come on, sir.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as you're well aware, the United States Environmental Protection Agency has been working for several years to develop a strategy to, quote unquote, clean up the Chesapeake Bay. Chesapeake Bay watershed contains approximately 64,000 square miles and encompasses parts of 6 states as well as the District of Columbia. If you remember, back in November, Mr. Akers gave a report to the board after the VACO meeting advising the board of the potential implications of these regulations. And about 6 weeks after Mr. Akers reported to the board, the EPA came out with their final document with what is called total maximum daily loads for the Chesapeake Bay. And I've included some excerpts of those materials in attachment 1 for your review. The EPA likes to refer to this document as a pollution diet, and TMDLs were developed as a part of a settlement to a lawsuit citing their failure to enforce certain standards of the Clean Water Act as it relates to the Chesapeake Bay. The TMDLs have been established for all 6 states as well as the District of Columbia, and allocations have been established by the EPA. They've further refined those allocations and assigned specific loadings to the different sub-watersheds that feed the Chesapeake Bay. There are a number of sub-watersheds in Virginia. We are fortunate or unfortunate enough to lie within 2 watersheds, the Rappahannock as well as the James River. So as the TMDLs filter down from the state level to the watershed level to the sub-watershed level, we will be looking at programs in both the Rappahannock River watershed as well as the James River watershed. As part of the agreement, Virginia was required to submit for approval a watershed implementation plan, which was submitted by the Commonwealth on November 29th of last year and included in part of EPA's TMDL program. The Virginia Water Improvement Program identifies pollution reduction strategies in 4 areas of categories: agriculture, urban, municipal point source, such as wastewater treatment plants, as well as industrial dischargers. Based upon our review of the plan, it appears that for the first 5 years of this planning process, most of the efforts will be involved in developing regulatory measures. DCR is currently working on developing a stormwater management program, evaluating local programs, and identifying required changes to local programs. So much of the initial effort within the first couple of years is going to be in planning and program development and not in the actual enforcement of new regulations. However, as the board is aware, with the upgrade of our wastewater treatment plant and a new discharge permit, in fact, some standards have already started to be implemented by the Commonwealth of Virginia. We had to meet new nutrient limits with the renewal of our wastewater treatment plant permit and take those into consideration in the construction of our addition to the plant. Under the Virginia Watershed Implementation Plan, agricultural sources will be addressed through enhanced Chesapeake Bay regulations that will be developed by the Department of Conservation and Recreation and passed down to local governments to administer through their local Chesapeake Bay ordinances. So, for example, there's been a lot of talk about how agriculture is now going to have to meet new discharge limits for non-point pollution and how much that's going to cost the agricultural community. The state, federal government has passed this requirement down to the states. The state will now be passing some of those requirements on to local government for enforcement through our adopted Chesapeake Bay preservation programs. Municipal and industrial discharges will be administered through DEQ and not be administered by DCR. That agency is the state agency responsible for permitting those types of discharges. Finally, and perhaps more importantly, it applies to our local efforts. Urban sources, which include stormwater management facilities and things like that, will be governed by enhanced stormwater management regulations that will be adopted by the Commonwealth pursuant to the Virginia Stormwater Management Regulations. These regs were first adopted in 2009, were immediately suspended by DCR, and have been under review and revision ever since that date. And it is anticipated that these new regulations will be adopted within the next 60 days or so. These regulations continue to be a moving target and have not yet been finalized. But I think based upon our discussions with the regulatory agencies, as well as the review of the draft documents, there will be significant changes to local programs that will be required by these new regulations. Localities will, in most cases, have to adopt new stormwater management and erosion and sediment control regulations with enhanced measures that will be consistent with state requirements. This may also require changes to the development review process. Localities with Chesapeake Bay ordinances will also likely be required to modify those regulations to address the new agricultural regulations. The plan of development process, or our site plan process that we go through, likely will take longer due to the additional technical review requirements, and also will result in higher costs to the applicant. One area that will involve significant